Thank you, Selectman Vespoli, and thank you, Chairman Salafia. Tonight we have with us, we really tried to bring everybody in which a question could be directed to. So tonight, in addition to myself, we have Deputy Town Manager John Mangiarotti, our Fire Chief Michael Mansfield, our Police Chief Patrick Keefe, Sergeant Edgerly, who was the safety officer when the project was going through permitting, our existing safety officer Glenn Oda, our Director of Public Works Chris Cronin, our construction inspector David Dargy, our building inspector Chris Clementi, town council, of course, Tom Herbalis is here, Director of Planning Paul Matarazzo, Director of Public Health Tom Carboni, Bob Douglas, our Director of Conservation. So we have the whole team here. We're ready to answer questions and listen to concerns and work with the audience to define a pathway forward.
So if we could, we'll work this a little bit like citizens petitions, okay, so that we'll be recognized by the chair. You can come up and speak. If you try to keep it down to 3 minutes, try not to be repetitive. If we could make different points each time, that we can probably get to more of you. So I'd appreciate if we could stay to that. And having said that, who would like to start? Sir?
Good evening. My name is Michael Restucia. This is my wife, Penny.
Welcome, Mike.
I'd like to start by saying I'm not the Michael Restucia that has done a lot of development here. Because I know there's another Michael Restucia in town.
Used to move houses around a lot, yeah.
Yes, he moved a lot of historic houses, yeah.
Our house is on the historic district. And I wish we were involved during the approval process, because I'd like to hire that gentleman, Brian, who's so passionate. Please see me afterwards. So we're only going to take 3 minutes. This is my wife here. She doesn't speak in public, really, so I had her 3 minutes. She put together a statement that she's going to read for you, if that's okay. All right?
Good. That's fine.
And
Welcome.
Thank you. We bought our property at 131 Elm Street in December of 2016. We were aware of the 96-unit assisted living residence project. We relied heavily on the integrity of the Andover town boards and selectmen when making our decision to purchase this home. This has proven to be a grave error in our judgment and on our part. The project should never have been approved in a residential neighborhood. There has been negligence in providing accurate information regarding the blasting activities that started on or about 10/2017 and continues today. In a memo dated 12/2017, the town of Andover wrote on their website, the town of Andover would never allow construction or other activities that cause dangerous, hazardous, or harmful conditions for our residents. In 2015, Andover Selectmen and the developer CSH informed concerned parties there would be no blasting. I'm not sure if this was ignorance, but there has been blasting and a lot of it. Where are the geotech reports and the borehole drilling reports for this project? John McElway, Principal for Development at CSH, has made the following statements. We know construction activities can be challenging to the community. Therefore, some of the responsible activities we are doing include: we are meeting all town Andover construction requirements, and we are updating the immediate neighborhood weekly. We have never received one statement, anything from any of these people, and we are an immediate abutter. He also went on to say we lowered excavation noise to be 50% below the allowable decibel level. How is this achieved? We hear a full volume of excavation every day. I'd be happy to play some if anybody would like to hear it. We are here to present some, but not all, of the detrimental, dangerous, hazardous, and harmful conditions that are part of our daily existence on Elm Street. As abutters, we did not receive blasting notifications until we tracked down on our own an individual at MDB, Maine Drilling and Blasting, to add us to the list. During phase one, the notifications of when the blast would occur rarely coincided with the actual blast. At this time, we did not register our complaints. We believed there would be only a phase one of blasting, and it would be over in a few weeks. On 10/25/17, we received an email that blasting for phase one would be ending and phase two blasting would occur in the back of their property. Blasting continues to be as close as 10 feet to our property line. Mid-November, there was a fence-side conversation with Delbrook's project manager, Keith Shepard. He indicated there would be 4 or 5 more blasts at the back of their property, and then phase 2 would be complete. It is now January and the blasts continue. Has the scope of the project changed? Has the board approved quarry or operations on this site? On November 29 or 30, a representative from Maine Drilling and Blasting knocked on our door requesting we allow a seismograph to be placed alongside our garage in the rear of the property. After speaking with the individual, permission was granted as follows. Placement of the box would be along the garage. When placing or retrieving the box, the representative would knock on the door so that we could secure our dog, Ace, who has been traumatized and terrorized by the blasts. We would also like copies of the daily blast logs. On the morning of December 1, 2018, a different representative from the site came onto our property while the dog was out. He began digging alongside our porch. I went outside to see who was in the yard. I had to repeat the instructions that were agreed upon as to where the seismograph was placed and our instructions with our dog. Later that day, we received a blasting notification that the blast would occur at 1:15 p.m. At 2:15 p.m., the blast had not taken place. Michael let Ace outside, and shortly after, the blast went off. Ace took off running down Elm Street. Michael went running down the street to find the dog, and I received a phone call from a woman saying she had our dog close to Andover Center. As I was pulling into the yard, Michael was returning with Ace, and the representative was on our property collecting the seismograph. Michael had removed the probe from the ground. We told the representative to take the box and leave. We were trying to get the dog into the house safely. After this incident, it was clear that the project had no regard for the destruction of property and the concerns or rights of the abutters. At no time after this incident did we hear from CSH, MDB, or Delbrook to engage in communicating with us. That afternoon, I placed a heated call to Estefalvi at MDB. I conveyed my request for a copy of our pre-blasting report survey. I also strongly conveyed that the inaccuracy of the blasting time was negligent behavior and that MDB needed to communicate the blast times with some effort of accuracy. The blast time notifications since that call have improved. I called varying town offices that day and was given direction to call yet another office and finally directed to Lieutenant Beal of the Fire Prevention Office to register our complaints and to request our pre-blasting video and survey, and in addition, the blasting logs. I left a message on the voicemail that day for him. Deputy Town Manager John M. spoke to me that afternoon, offering assistance in obtaining the pre-blasting survey, but never followed through upon that. He did invite me to go to the fireworks taking place that night. Since there are plenty of detonations going on within 10 feet of our property, I declined. From 12/1 to 12/19, I was unable to obtain assistance in receiving the pre-blasting survey. MDB representative David Falvey told me that I would have to pay $25 to obtain this video. Estefalvi at MDB told me the Andover fire chief had to request the release of this report to me. I contacted Chief Mansfield and he told me he could not help me in obtaining that report. They were not by right the property of Andover Fire Prevention, or AFR. After further research of our own, we learned that Code CMR 527, Code 13 of Massachusetts provides that by law, abutters are to be given a free copy of their pre-blasting survey or video. On December 4th, 2017, Lieutenant Beal returned my phone call. He informed me at that time that a police report had been filed. The construction company representative reported that my husband threw the seismograph over the fence. I informed Lieutenant Beal that this was untrue and that such a juvenile statement was alarming. Mass CMR 527 Code 13 also provides that the seismograph be located nearest to a structure. This structure for the last month would be our garage. MDB chose after 12/1 never to come on our property and place it at that site again. They now place it on the neighbor's lawn. On Saturday, December 30th, 2017, we noticed the blasting mats were smoking. We called AFR. AFR responded to the site. I later followed up with Chief Mansfield regarding the incident. He responded via email, and I quote, "As explained, the smoke you refer to is actually steam coming from the mats themselves, as the moisture that is gathered from them heats up when the sun hits them and begins to evaporate. This is similar to when asphalt on a wet road heats up from the sun and gives off steam." On December 30th, 2017, the mean temperature for that day was 11 degrees Fahrenheit. Conditions were overcast and cloudy. Where would steam generate from under these conditions? On Friday, January 12th, 2018, we received notification that a blast would take place at 10 a.m. I waited until after the blast to leave the house to be with the dog. After the first blasting horn, 2 trucks were moved from the immediate blasting area. Upon exiting one of the vehicles, the driver took out a lighter and lit up a cigarette before moving to a safe location further from the blasting area. Again, a violation. Upon returning home between 2 and 2:30, I could see smoke coming from the blasting mats and a strong odor of burning tires. The odor was detectable both inside and outside our home. I emailed Chief Mansfield regarding the safe levels of toxic fumes from burning blasting mats that are comprised of old tires. He responded on Wednesday, January 17th, stating that there was an AFR representative on site that day and there was no alleged burning or mats or violations. Perhaps the representative was safely in the construction trailer or on the other side of the mats. I do not find gaslighting an effective form of communication when resolving the blasting incidents occurring at 139 Elm Street. Our residence was built over 100 years ago. Although the reports in Chief Mansfield indicate that the blasting is below the allowable range, that range does not allow for houses built over 100 years ago, and neither does it allow for over 50 blasts that will occur for this project. Additionally, seismograph recordings do not allow for the heavy equipment that excavate after the blast. The excavation creates more underground velocity and tremors below and above ground. One of the interior walls in our home has buckled and is protruding from all the blasts. We are here today as taxpayers of Andover, and because of the damage to our home, lack of credible communication on the parties involved, on the town government and the developer's agents. The selectmen should now adopt bylaws governing the amount of blasting for commercial properties in residential and historic areas.
So, can I make a recommendation? So today was day 30 of the blasting, and I would invite everybody here in this room and everybody up here to our house tomorrow for Penny's homemade scones and coffee to listen to day 31. And I'm dead serious. It is unbelievable.
Yeah. You know, it's clear to me from the correspondence that I've had with plenty of the neighbors that there's really been a disappointment here. I realize this is more than disappointment. Let me finish here, okay? It's really disappointment that there hasn't been better communications, clearly. I mean, I made a simple request over a month ago that we use the code red system just to let people know in the general area that when these are going to happen on a daily basis, and it took 3 weeks later to get rejected by the administration, town manager, and both chiefs. But I had a call, I had asked 3 times why there wasn't a response to it, so I'm disappointed in that. But these are all symptoms of lack of communication, overall communications. I know that, the Chief Mansfield, has put significant amount of time responding to these individual things, and I know he has, but, you know, the fact that we don't have a proper way to communicate on a regular basis is what I'm hearing here, is what the symptoms are from the correspondence that we've gotten and the conversations that I've had with the community, which is why I thought this meeting was critical, so that everybody could hear the frustration in that neighborhood. And I'm sympathetic to that. I've gone and I've heard the crushing which is going on now. But so, you know, agree with the sentiment of where you're coming from with the specific issues. But we you know, and I'll just reach out to the town manager for a better way that we can communicate. These are our residents. These are our neighbors wherever we live, and if any of us lived in that neighborhood, we would have just the same sensitivity that people are feeling now.
Okay, anyone next? Anyone else? Sir?
Christopher Yates, 130 Elm Street.
Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Why are we here? We are here because of an inept planning board that listened to nobody. This is the aftermath. We sat here time and time again. Never once was there a justification for taking a single-family neighborhood and blowing it up day after day. And that's what we're living with right now, is an inept, incompetent, and corrupt planning board that is in
Whoa,
the
whoa,
pocket of
whoa.
the developers.
We don't use the word
Okay.
corrupt, okay,
I
please?
take that one back.
Please.
The planning board's first priority should say no to everything, and then look at that development. Is there a justification for this disruption of a single-family neighborhood? And in almost every case in that Elm Street development, the answer is no. But they didn't listen to us time and time again. It was a dog and pony show. You come up here, well, let's cut the units down by a couple. Let's change the roof line. Let's put a speed light so we'll know how fast people are going on Elm Street. They ignored us. They never once proved this was overwhelmingly valuable, because it was not. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Hi, I'm Christine Dillman, 121 Elm Street, five houses
Welcome,
away
Christine.
from the blasting.
Yep.
With all due respect, Mr. Bispoli, you spoke so highly and protection of these people and the cell towers going up. We were not heard. We came to those meetings. We went to the meeting. The planning
Selectmen
meeting.
didn't have a vote on that particular proposal. That was a planning board issue. This one we did have a vote on, so just to
But
to
where were you
clarify that.
protecting the citizens then? Why wasn't
What's
there a
that?
vote?
That was a planning board decision. That never came up before that.
But where was the community, when was the community heard then?
At the planning board hearings.
We weren't. We were shut down many times during those meetings as well.
Okay.
I also would like to understand better the Conservation Committee who approved letting it happen with the Avis lands and possible vernal pools. They were told that, they couldn't look at them being vernal pools during that time of year, but the project proceeded and that was never addressed.
So we've got the director of planning here and the head of the Conservation
Well,
Commission.
let's think. She asked a
Yeah.
conservation
Yeah.
question, so let's ask conservation to address it, please. Do we have a remote mic?
I can share.
Well, we got the same issue with, the phone needs to stay down here. So Dan can hear.
Please tell us who you are.
Sure.
We all know who you are, but please
Bob
do.
Douglas, Director of Conservation.
Thanks, Bob.
The laws that govern this particular site, as well as the rest through town, there is a 100-foot setback from a resource area, whether it's a pond, stream, or wetland, and this project is based over 100 feet away from the wetland. So there is no conservation jurisdiction on this particular spot, and that's why there was no conservation filing for that particular aspect of the vernal pools, et cetera. So it complies. They, in this case, it's a town permit, and that upland is not part of the resource area. So they are, and these are not certified vernal pools. They very well may be vernal pools, but no, there is no work scheduled for these vernal pools. I do understand that there is will be a future removal of a paved area immediately adjacent to these vernal pools, and that will require its own filing.
I have nothing else to say.
Okay, thank you. Next.
I'm very disappointed.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Susan Donahue, and I live at 14 Shipman Road.
Welcome, Susan.
And I attended probably every planning board meeting 2 years ago with many of the people that are here tonight. And I can honestly say we were dismissed. The neighbors were really not listened to. And one of the things that did come up at the time was the possibility of blasting. And if my memory serves me correctly, they said it would be minor, and the developer got around it by creating a subdivision of creating one extra little lot. Therefore, they could remove more earth removal than a single lot. So my question is, who is monitoring how much is being blasted and how much material is being removed? Because I believe in my article or the zoning 6.3, there's a limit of so many cubic yards. And if you drive by Elm Street tonight, we have Mount Kilimanjaro there.
I drove by it twice today, so
Right.
I agree.
Okay.
Chris, you
Thank
can
you
answer that
very
question,
much.
can you not? Chris? No, he's gonna remotely.
Planning board special permit allows up to 6,700 cubic yards to be removed from the site.
And how much is going to be removed and how much, just,
As of last Friday, I believe 2,700 cubic yards had been removed.
well,
For the entire site.
okay, let's not just speak out, okay? Sir,
Hi, Pete Paglia, 3 Farnsworth Road.
welcome.
So, with regards to the amount of earth that's being removed, one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, I think Mr. Vespoli mentioned it, was now the rock crushing is beginning. Okay? So, I was in contact, as well as some other neighbors, with Mr. McElwee from CSH, and on January 17th, he had, and I'm not sure if the neighbors are aware of this, but he has mentioned that rock crushing will continue till approximately March 26th, okay? March 26th. And in the email, he also informed me, because of the town's restriction to limit earth moving to 6,700 yards, quote, the rock crushing would have had to occur even if we used heavy equipment versus line blasting. In other words, the planning board either had to know and didn't tell us, or was not aware that rock crushing was going to happen. And no one had informed the neighbors. So this starts at 7 a.m. You can talk to some of the neighbors. I have glasses that shake in my cabinets. I already have one report, and there'll be another report that's going to the fire department for damage. When is this going to stop? When we talked to the town, even about back to last October, about trying to get communication going with regards to detours, permits, what is going to happen with road closures. Literally, the response I got, quote, on October 16th was, I suggest you reach out to municipal services if you have questions regarding utility work. As far as blasting permits, I would suggest contacting fire prevention. I'm not aware of any requirements or bylaw that require the town to provide notice to residents of a private construction project. Really? This is a town issue that has been going on for years. And the appropriate response from town leadership is that there's no bylaw recommending communication. I don't know when it's going to stop. With regards to blasting, we are given 30 days to report an issue with a home. Structural damage you're hearing is happening. We have someone on Washington Street we know that has damage to their home. Washington Street. And within 30 days, we're supposed to know if there's structural damage to the home. What protection do we have as residents if I find a crack in my foundation in 6 months? Am I going to call the planning board? Am I going to call town leadership? Am I going to call the selectmen? Am I going to call the fire chief? Who do we call? This is insane. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
My name's Rob Champa, 53 Pine Street.
Welcome.
Thank you for your time, selectmen, town officials. More importantly, all of you have come out tonight. We shouldn't be here. I'm going to ask a couple of questions tonight. And unlike the people before me, I've got 100 signatures here, and we'll have 1,000 soon, about what we want. First question is, who represents the residents of Andover? I don't know. I don't know. They don't know. So I walked the streets yesterday. I got invited into people's homes. They showed me their cracks and what was going on and what was breaking. Here's some quotes. I hate this town. I don't trust the leaders. We don't know where to turn. And more importantly, I get no response. How many of you have not gotten a response? You have all received my emails. I've pulled this community together. No response. I'm a business leader too. I would fire my employees if I got no response. Who represents the residents of Andover? Today at 2:30, I was home. I've started my second company in Andover. I'm going to move it to Boston. So I was home at 2:30. We already have some damage. The 2:30 blast today was unconscionable. It cracked my ceiling. I really wasn't going to report anything, and then today's crack occurred. Who do I call? Do I submit a claim? Or what do I do? Absolutely insane. So, what are we told here? I love the term, you use gaslighting? This is a case study of gaslighting. For those of you on the email today, we're not going crazy. We're told, oh, we're in compliance. CSH, John McElwee, who was more than disparaging of Andover residents, and by the way, I was still waiting for a response to John McElwee over what he said to Andover residents from all of you. He said he's in compliance. So, my fellow citizens, there's nothing wrong here. This is all normal. The problem is all of you. All of you with cracked foundations, broken walls. And this is normal. Gaslighting. You folks are gaslighting the residents of Andover. Shame on all of you, and especially other people here. Who is representing the residents of Andover? I'm waiting for somebody to step up. Elm Street, why don't we read the eulogy? Elm Street is dead, guys. Dead. And what you found is nobody's going to do a damn thing. You can file the reports. How many people have proactively, aside from me and a couple of others, gone to your house? Wow. All this stuff going on and nobody's gone to your house. Nobody's walked the neighborhood and said, hey, what can we do here? Because it's your problem. It's your problem. There's something wrong with you. Let's change gears. So we met. We resurrected the Elm Street group. We got together with some other groups. So since we're getting no direction from leadership, we decided to give you our own, and I have the signatures to back this up. Number one, we are calling for a change in leadership of the Planning and Economic Development Department. Number two, we're calling for the elimination of an appointed planning board in favor of an elected one, and we began the paperwork today. The planning board, who are they accountable to? We don't elect them. Elm Street would have never happened were there an elected planning board. 3, Selectman Salafia, we're calling for your recusal from all issues related to planning and zoning.
I don't know why I'd do that, but go ahead.
I think it's
move on.
clear.
It's not clear, but move on.
Next, we're calling for the establishment of an independent commission to review zoning loopholes. Specifically, we're calling for a zoning bylaw study committee. This would have never happened if our bylaws were reviewed. Nobody understands the consequences of zoning actions. Nobody's reviewing the zoning. This should have never occurred. There are loopholes. The developers know it. They're all over Elm Street because we have a provision. What's disconcerting to me is that those of us who buy houses and we look at zoning and see single family, again, because it's our problem, we don't look for the little things. The developers do, and they run to town with it. It's an absolute disgrace. Next, how many of you feel, and raise your hand if you feel you've had a satisfactory response from the town of Andover over all of this? Come on, somebody raise your hand. I don't feel good. In some of our paperwork, we're calling for an investigation into Andover planning by the Attorney General of Massachusetts.
Okay, we have a 3-minute. We have a 3-minute time limit, so if you could.
I have 2 more points, thank you.
You're well beyond 3 minutes, so if you could wrap it up. I'm trying, please, relax. I'm just trying to get more people to come up. I said that at the beginning. You kept it at 3 minutes.
Let the residents speak. My gosh,
yeah.
let the residents speak. If it was Sal Lapoli at that microphone, there would be unlimited time.
Okay. All right, let's get order in the room, please. Continue on. Please be quiet.
Next.
Please be quiet. Please be quiet.
We need the creation of a set of communication standards. I am appalled when I'm speaking on behalf of so many people, and I have their signatures, and I reach out to all the people over there, people over here, and I don't get a response. How many of you get responses? The blasting, we're surprised, same thing. And then finally, the formation of a clear and measurable safety provisions for residents. One of the things that we learned, ironically, remember, because this is all within compliance, there's nothing wrong with all of our cracking houses. The town doesn't have the wherewithal, and the town was not ready for this project. Cracking foundations, the noise, the rock crushing. Rock crushing noise, how many experience it? Every day. 7 a.m. this morning, it was great. The noise shakes the house. What's the law? Town doesn't have sound meters. So that's it for me.
Let me ask a question. The health department, do we have sound meters? Can we take sound readings?
Mr. Chairman, is this on? Mr. Chairman, we've been able to borrow a noise meter from the Department of Environmental Protection. I have been out there a few times over the last few days taking baseline readings, and we are in the process of reviewing all of that.
Okay, well, if you could do more than renew it, we could just kind of take daily readings and see if we can get some handle to what this noise levels are, and if they are exceeding, then we have to do something about it.
That's what we're working on, sir.
Okay.
So here are my parting words, Andover. You're being faced with a lot of development projects. Many of us question the development process. And by the way, as Mr. Paglia said, the rules changed. There wasn't any blasting. And let it be noted, when the decision was made on blasting, which was last October, a year and a half after this initial discussion, the neighborhood was not part of that discussion. When we brought up the issue, we were told, oh, it was put on the website. That's, in football, guys, we call that a punt. Shame on you for punting. And that's really gutsy, because you didn't want to face us. So, as we look at other projects, Andover, understand one, the rules are going to change. Okay? And when things go awry, guess what? You're screwed. Nothing's going to happen. And I'll ask one more question. Who represents the residents of Andover?
Would anyone else like to speak? Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak? There's someone up there. Do we have a mic? A remote mic?
The only way Dan's going to hear is...
Well, welcome, both of you.
My name is Paula Pinkney. I live at 8 Tanglewood Way North. Bob Douglas, you might know the name. I apologize. I moved to Andover 11 years ago. I moved here, ironically, for old people. My in-laws are here. They're 80. They live on Ivanhoe. I live about a half mile as the crow flies from 141 Elm, where this old age facility is going up. I hear the blasting. I feel the blasting. My dogs hover in the corner under the drapes. It's not pleasant. When I'm at my in-laws' house over in Ivanhoe, which runs between Chestnut and Summer, off of Upland, I can hear it there. I do not feel it, but I hear it. And again, I was at those meetings, those long meetings, and I recall little to no blasting. Did anyone else hear that? Little to no blasting? Has anyone heard little to no blasting? No. Benny, have you heard little to no blasting? Yeah, there's been blasting, and pretty much daily, hence the fire detail, hence the blasting blankets, hence the plumes. And I understand there are regulations to help prevent additional upset to the area from the blasting, but there is still blasting, there is still rock crushing, there were still decisions made that were not communicated to those affected. And I realize that change is inevitable. I think everyone realizes that. And, you know, personally, I didn't approve of this project, but I accept that this project is happening. I do not approve of the way it is happening. I do not find it acceptable, the amount of behind the scenes decisions and the what seem to be manipulative practices maybe between the developers and the planning board.
I think you're on an edge there. Where I don't want you to be saying, listen.
No, if we're told little to no blasting, and then we've had daily blasting since, October? We're in a new year. I mean, we're talking daily. I live a half mile away, and I'm hearing it. A half mile, people. I am practically on High Street. I'm at the end of Tanglewood. I abut High Street, and I'm hearing it and feeling it. I mean, this isn't like someone's building a house and, oh, it's going to be dusty for a few weeks and dirty.
So it's definitely more than little or no blasting. Obviously, those
Right, but
mounds
we
are
were told
huge,
little or no blasting, and how come there wasn't an update to us?
Well, one of the problems is that the planning board or the planning department, they rely on engineering to warrant to them what kind of ledge is there. Apparently, that was a disconnect. I don't know how or where, but we have to, well, it is. It's a huge disconnect, so we have to find out what happened there, and I think that's something that we want to find out. So, if in fact those borings were done, and they actually said that there was little or no blasting, then we should probably find out
Oh, I'm sure
why
it's
that
in the
happened.
minutes of the meeting. I mean, how could
Why
it
that
not be?
happened, yeah.
But, I just want to say, honest to God, I moved here for old people, and even the old people who I moved here for are appalled, and they are townies. I mean, they are diehard, grew up in Andover townies. So this just doesn't sit right. I'm very disappointed, and I formerly loved this town, and I really can't say it anymore, and it just makes me sad. I just wanted to share it. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Sir?
Hello, Larry Stefani, 11 Burton Farm Drive.
Welcome.
Thank you. 2:19 p.m., by the way, in case anybody, I slacked my wife when the blast went off today. Exactly 2:19. I was on the computer. I do that. When I'm working from home, I slack her when the bomb goes off because the whole house reverberates. I have a couple of computer equipment in my lab at home, and they start to go. The UPS starts to skip a little bit because it can feel the reverberations as well. But anyway, that's not why I'm here. Bob Douglas will remember my project. We demoed a house back in, we bought a house in December 2008, 11 Burton Farm Drive. It was a split. Neighbors around me, they were actually excited about the idea of us tearing down the home and building something new. All of whom warned us about ledge, which I knew little of at the time. But working with Bob Douglas on Conservation Commission, because I bought wetlands, working with the town, we got a demo permit, tore the house down in April 2009, built the house, moved in 2010. The ledge is interesting because it was a split and we wanted to have a full basement. And what our builder wound up doing when he got down, they did something called test holes, which I'm not convinced they did very well on this project here. They knew there was ledge, they realized how far they need to go down, and they brought in some heavy equipment to break up the machine. As enjoyable as it would have been, I never got to use any kind of pyrotechnics on this house, even to demo it. But what they wound up doing was raising grade, and that wound up being the solution. So raising grade about 3 feet saved me a lot of money in terms of having to dig down and break up the ledge even further. I'm absolutely appalled at the amount of blasting that's going on here, almost to the point where it's got to be entertaining for the company that's doing it. I'm just, it's amazing. And I know there's machinery that they could use to break it up. I also know that they can make changes in the plan, come back to the planning board, come back to this board, and say, you know what, it's a lot bigger than we thought. There's a lot more ledge and rock than we thought. We didn't do a good job assessing the area, and rather than put the neighborhood through what they're doing right now, they would change the plans. Maybe it's not as tall a building, maybe it doesn't have as many rooms. That would be the kind of adjustment I would expect, a company that cares about the neighborhood it's moving into would do. This company does not care. They're here for a business, they're interested in getting that business, and it doesn't matter about the neighborhood, okay? And I'm tired of bringing my kids to the bus stop in the morning, right on Burton Farm Drive, and having to deal with National Grid trucks now. Right, it was bad enough with the detour on West Wind to Burton Farm I had to put up with. It was bad enough with the cars going down there and having to call the police department and bring safety officers down to slow the cars down. It's bad enough having to bring out safety cones because they weren't always brought out by the crew, and having all these cars go by very fast and having to not allow my kids to walk on Burton Farm Drive while that was, all right, fine, that's over. Now, I get to enjoy National Grid trucks. Ton of National Grid trucks, bringing in poles, parking out in the morning to go and do all this work. Every work day. I'm sick of it. I want this project to be done. How soon is it going to be done? When is the blasting going to be done? When is this project going to be done? Thank you.
Chris Clementi, could you give us a little time frame? Do you know, give us an idea when this might be completed and when the blasting is going to be completed?
Blasting will be completed Friday, 26th.
Well, let's listen to him, okay? Let's listen. And the end of the project, is there an end in sight to the project? I mean, when will they actually be cutting a ribbon?
March of 2019.
Bonnie?
Bernice Downs, 147 Elm Street, right next door. We've been waiting for this for 3 years. When they first proposed it, it was 3 years ago. And now the blasting is terrible. I jump off my couch every time I hear it. And we have electric trucks, all the trucks in front of our house every day. And it's just getting very annoying, and I think something should be done about it. I'm 87 and my husband's 90, and we've been in Andover all our life, and I've never seen the likes of this before. I hope you can do something about it. Thank you.
Okay. Chris, I hate to keep calling on you, but is when will all the earth moving be done? And all of it, just, I know that the end of the project, they'll be cutting the ribbon in March of 19, but most of the really noisy stuff is the earth moving.
Contractor expects the blasting to be done Friday, the 26th. After that, there's approximately 40 days of rock crushing. Foundations, the rock crushing has already commenced. There's 40 days approximately of rock crushing. Foundations start going in February.
Chris, is there any grounds to halt the operation? Is there any? And the reason I ask that, if there's a gap between what was approved and what's happening, that's what I'm hearing, right? They've said no blasting, there's blasting, the stone crushing situation, and do we have grounds to put a temporary halt on this project?
Legally, I do not. There were boring logs done.
Please.
All of the boring logs showed ledge on the property. The engineer of record, at the time, thought that ledge could be fractured using equipment.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, not to interrupt you, Mr. Clementi, defer to town council on with regard to what the town's rights and abilities are with regard to the project.
Tom?
As Chris said, the planning board decision referenced that there was going to be blasting. Condition number 9. The borings, as Chris said, showed there was going to be blasting. To my knowledge, I haven't been informed that the blasting is in excess of state regulation the requirements as far as the decibel levels. And I believe Tom Carboni has been, is and has, or will be monitoring the decibel levels of the rock crushing to see if they are in compliance with state regulations. The fire chief, more than anyone, has been monitoring the blasting and the levels there. And I don't want to speak for him, but I'm not aware that any of the regulations that the state has with regard to the blasting have been exceeded.
So is there no, when a decision gets approved by the planning board and there's a mention of it, is there no limit? Is there no regulation? Is there no time frame in a decision? Is that a piece that's left out from a decision?
It's not in this decision.
So it's open. It sounds like it's a miss. It sounds like it's, if it was probable and there's no description of what that means as far as time frame and noise or whatever, then is that something that should have been in the decision?
It's not in the decision. I don't know. I didn't go to the planning board hearings, but it's not in the decision as far as time frame for blasting or frequency of blasting or any of those kinds of things that a building inspector enforces if there are conditions.
So this can go on, and there's nothing in that decision that regulates the duration of this.
Pardon me?
There's nothing in the decision that regulates the duration of this.
That's correct.
Tom, we've also heard several claims that they might have cracks in their ceilings and walls and all of that. Is there a process, a legal process whereby?
Well, I think the chief has already talked to people about that. If you want to address that, chief.
Good evening. If anybody has a claim that they would like to submit, they can get the form. It's Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Fire Services form. It's called FP 296. I've received a couple of these already from residents. It's the blasting regulatory review form. The resident needs to fill out the top portion of the first form and then submit it to my office or drop it off down at headquarters, 32 North Main Street. And we will take that information from the resident, fill in the rest of the form as we're required by regulation, state regulation, and submit that to the Department of Fire Services in Stowe. And they will continue on with the process of reviewing it and looking to see if there was any violations of regulation.
Thank you, Chief.
It's the blasting regulatory review form. It's FP 296. And if you need a copy of it, I have probably 5 or 6 of them with me. I'd be more than happy to give one to you if I've got it. If not, you can download it, like I said, or you can send me an email, and I will certainly be willing to drop one off to your residence if that's what you would desire to do.
Can we put this up
on the website?
On the website with
Yeah.
the other information or a link to it so that residents could get it easily?
Yeah,
I'm
the
sorry, say that
website.
again?
Can we put a link or a copy of this up on the website with the other information on this project so that residents can get it easily?
I'm sure that can be done. The form has to be completed by the complainant or the property owner and returned to my office within 30 days of the alleged incident.
I'm sorry, the 30 days is not going to be possible for any of us.
All right.
Because we're not going to know the damage maybe 6 months. Because I should say my name is Manny Arora. I'm at 7 Burton Farm Drive. I moved into town 3 years ago. And I'm about 1,000 yards away from the property where the blasts are happening. And, if we have dishes in our, if my wife is doing dishes and the blast happens, we have dishes broken.
Let me ask you a question, so if an incident happens today, and you say it has to be submitted within 30 days, if it happens again next week, there's no limit to the amount of, or is there?
This is not regulated by Andover Fire. This is regulated by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the Department of Fire Services. So if you have multiple occurrences, I would encourage you to complete a form each and every time that you feel as though you've had additional damage. That way it protects you, and we'll have each and every occurrence documented appropriately. That's what the state requires.
I think that means we have to file one every day because we believe that every day our foundation is is going through some kind of damage. Seriously, I mean, I think we all feel that, and that's why we are here. We don't know the damage today.
No. The state is the regulatory, State Fire Service is the regulatory agency that looks over and reviews all of these things in conjunction with the blasting company and their insurance. So who's going to pay for the damage? I can't tell you that, ma'am.
You said they're insured, though?
I would assume it would be the blasting company's insurance company.
Thank you, Chief. Sir, you finished with your comments?
Yes, I just wanted to let you know, I mean, we are all concerned, and at Burton Farm, I also wanted to raise my voice, and I do not have any damage right now, but I do seriously believe we will have damage the way it's going on, and I just want to be protected when we have a claim to file.
Right.
That somebody is there, we need a direction, what to do, and when to, and how much time do we have? We just need some more time.
So I thought that was helpful, or was it helpful for you that once you identify some damage, you can fill out that form and...
But 30 days is not going to be possible. I mean, if I have to predict something, then I have to file a claim every single day.
Well, no, I don't think that's what the chief was saying, is once you identify damage...
Maybe I didn't hear, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you can have multiple incidents, but if you have foundation damage, I would think that would be one claim. If you had ceiling damage, that would be one claim.
But if I don't know in 30 days, I mean, if it's, maybe, it's like, what if it's a year, that's what look, I accept the project, but I just don't like the way it is happening. Right. I just wish somebody tell us that, I don't think these blasts are normal, or, everybody, I mean, I'll just want to give some time to this gentleman too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jay Arbo. We live on 14 Burton Farm.
Welcome.
So first of all, thank you very much for setting this up. I appreciate it. We get, you give us people the time. I'm wondering if anyone is here from the planning board.
Yes.
So my question is, from about 3 years ago when this started, and we came to so many meetings and voiced our concerns about the project. And now here we are in the middle of the project. It's a residential community. Our concerns were heard, but not, I feel like it was lip service, right? Here, you guys, you will hear your concerns, but at the end of the day, we're going to grant the project. My question is, what is the benefit to the town of Andover? The town of Andover is primarily for the people who live in Andover. Serve its community, serve its people, its residents. Is this business, I mean, this is all about money, right? There's no money in it, there's no reason any of us are here. So what do all of us get from this project? What does everyone in the town of Andover get from this project? It's financial, it's purely financial, right? So, ironically, we looked at a house in Littleton to buy, and it was too close to a quarry where they did frequent blasting. So we bought a house on Burton Farm Drive, and there's plenty of blasting here. And I can tell you that when they redirected traffic, we had several conversations with the safety officer about, putting up a stop sign. People were flying through our streets. There was no one there to monitor, right? We put up a couple of signs saying yield. Several almost accidents. My wife goes out to the grocery store. She comes home, and our mailbox is laying in the street. Someone clipped our mailbox. Who knows who it was, right? But traffic was bombing through there. We're right on the corner. They came around, maybe texting, whatever. But again, who's watching out for us? Right? Is it all about the revenue, tax revenue from this business? And what can we do now that we are where we are? So I think, once again, thank you for coming. We're looking to you guys for help. And that's it.
I think some of that was directed to the planning board, so Austin, if you'd like to.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Austin Simcoe, and I'm chair of the planning board. So there's a limit to how much I can speak to this. I was not on the planning board when this project was approved. I can say that I've been sitting here for the entire meeting, and I've been listening to you, and I hear the frustration. I'm with you. I understand why it would be this frustrating and this disappointing. I think the blasting is a technical issue with a lot of moving parts. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in all of it, but I want to make just an overarching general comment to get to what I think is the heart of the issue, which is, how did this project get approved to begin with? How did we get in this situation? And that's a perfectly fair question. And this is what I can say. In my 2 or so years on the planning board, I see a board that tries to be deliberative, responsive, to follow zoning, the rules of the game, to do their best to avoid future litigation, to make sure we haven't exceeded the norms that have been put in place by the state and by local zoning. And so what I think the heart of the issue is, we need to make sure that we have zoning in this town where the rules are clear for the planning board and where the rules are what our neighborhoods and our residents can get behind. And so there's been conversation over several selectmen meetings, and Paul Matarazzo and I have talked about this. Can we do some sort of review of what are the rules of the game? What does the zoning say in the different parts of the town? So that we're not caught in this difficult situation when you have a property owner who's bought property and says, I want to do what I believe I'm able to do under the zoning. So we look at what the rules of the game are, and we say, zoning is something that evolves over decades. But do our zoning rules of the game make sense now the way they did when they were approved? And I think that's probably the best thing that we could do as a community. And it's something as chair of the planning board that I'm intensely interested in personally getting involved in, to help be a part of some effort where we say, what are the rules of the road? What are the rules of this game? So that the planning board has the tools it needs to respond to the concerns that are out there, while also respecting property owners' rights, while also giving the community what it needs in this particular time in 2018. So, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, to follow up on Chairman Simcoe's remarks, we hear you. I'm speaking to you as your town manager. We've heard you. The people in the corner, our town resources have worked, will continue to work. We will dedicate as many resources within the limitations of what we're able to do to get you through this project. We're here. Our ears are open. We want to have a collaborative discussion throughout it. We understand it's difficult. There are things that weren't expected initially that you're living now. We understand that. But we're going to do everything we can to help you through it. I'm telling you, the folks here have spent hours and hours. I talk to them on the weekends. I talk to them at night. I talk to them in the morning about this project. And we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to do everything we can, like I said, to get you through it.
All right, please. Oh, no hollering out, please.
Hi,
Thank you.
Can I speak now, or
Please.
someone? Okay.
Please.
Lori Paglia. I'm at 3 Farnsworth Road.
Welcome,
Is this all right? I'm too tall. Just have a quick question. So this project was approved by the planning board, and I feel, and I'm sure all of us feel, that they approved it, walked away, then all of a sudden all this stuff happened. Why do we not, for any of these projects, instead of being told, well, sorry, we can't help you, it's a private project. Like it's like our neighbors were building a garage. Why is there, or was there not a liaison from the planning board or from the town office looking over Joe McElwee and all these other people who basically sold a story to you guys? And you have to admit that they did, because if they didn't, this crap wouldn't be happening right now.
Once
Right?
an approval happens and it is, then it is overseen by the building inspector. And it is really his job, and you heard from him.
Right.
To watch all of that and to make sure that they stay within the legal bounds.
Well, apparently that wasn't happening. So we wouldn't be here if everything was happening the way it should have been, and the community and the residents were being communicated to appropriately, on time. If the developer was honest, instead of saying we informed all the abutters, we are a direct abutter. We never got one letter, we never got one email or one phone call. In fact, the gas company showed up at our house and said that we weren't even on the map. I mean, how diligent can they be if a butter's home isn't even on their map? So now I know there's a lot of people and there's a lot of hands in this, but is there one person we can funnel all of our information through that can communicate, so we're not reaching out to the fire department and the health department and, everybody else?
Well, it does go through, the building inspector is sort of the quarterback here. So he
So we should all contact the building inspector every time?
I mean, I hate to burden him with a ton of that kind of thing without having some backup. So I would ask John Mangiarati, could you help us out on that? And
Absolutely.
Or at least assign someone, he's our deputy town manager.
Yes,
to
absolutely.
Try to have a person assigned to this where they can funnel things into and make sure that Chris or the fire chief, police chief, or whoever might be notified that there's this concern in a particular time.
Or someone dealing directly with CSH too, directly with Joe McElwee. Do you remember who he is?
Right.
Yeah. So who's dealing with him? Is anybody?
The building inspector.
John has been dealing, Deputy Town Manager Mangiaratti's been dealing with him directly.
Well, good luck with that.
I know also that the police chief and the fire chief were concerned about using code red, and I understand your concern, but maybe in this particular instance, if there is something of urgent need, we could use it. And I know the town manager has also spoken to both of you about it, but if you could reconsider that might be helpful to the community from a communication standpoint.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Lou Polo, 23 Johnson Road.
Welcome.
I'd like to ask a follow-up question about the rock crushing, the noise measurements. If these were done, is there any preliminary, I know you said you need to review all the data, but a noise meter gives a number. It's 63 decibels, it's so many dBA. Is there some indication that whoever did the measurement, it's 10 dB above, it's 20 dB below? There must be some sense of what's going on. I'd appreciate it if you could share that.
It's actually not good for me to talk about that right now. It's there's a process that protects you folks in the town. We do need to follow the process. I've been out there for 3 days now. That'll continue. We've got another plan as well that we're not ready to pull the plug on yet, but we are looking at other options as well. So we're going to look at this. I can't, to use a term that Chris uses every once in a while, I can't call a foul until the foul happens. And we have to go through the process. It's long. I understand that. I wish that it wasn't long. But for the best outcome, this is what we have to do.
So you're saying it's not possible to just say our measurements were in this range?
I've had measurements ranging from 40 dBA to 70 dBA, and that 70 dBA being a car driving by as we were reading. So we need to go through the process.
All right, a couple other quick points. As far as the damage that's been done, I keep hearing lots of comments, well, we'll see whether it's in compliance with the law. In terms of damage, is that really relevant in the sense of being able for people whose property has been damaged to collect on a claim, or the fact that it's been damaged give them some rights for compensation?
I can't answer it legally, but I would assume that damage is
I
damage.
assume there's some
You
liability
should remain whole.
regardless of whether they're in compliance.
Tom?
I believe there was a survey done, pre-survey before the blasting with some folks. There was a reason for that contractors do that, is to measure before and after in anticipation of claims. I can't give you any legal advice, but contractors like this usually have insurance companies, but obviously it's not a claim that the town can reimburse you for if you have damage to your house. But I suggest, I mean, there are people here who had hired lawyers after this case was, after the decision was filed, and they filed a lawsuit against the town. So whatever lawyers are available to you, I suggest you talk to them about your personal rights with regard to any damages caused by the blasting.
So, I have a couple of other, again, small points. So my understanding is this whole project was approved in terms of relative to zoning, what's called the special permit. So my understanding is that this is discretionary, not required. Is that true? It's not like you have a lot in a single-family house, therefore you can go ahead and build a single-family house.
Yeah, this project was approved pursuant to a special permit, yes.
So, but that's discretionary to the planning board, is that correct?
They have things.
They could say yes or no. Is that true?
Not
The answer is
arbitrarily,
maybe.
though.
Because they go through, they have their own requirements that they have to satisfy with regard, that they have no discretion about, with things they have to consider.
Are they required to approve it, is the simple question.
Are they required to approve it?
Yes.
They're,
They have a discretion.
They hold hearings, and if the developer or whoever applies satisfies whatever conditions of the bylaws.
Paul, can I get a straight answer? This seemed like a very simple question. They're either like single family, are required to approve it, just the fact that it's filed, or after doing all their process, are they allowed to say no?
No, just the fact that it's filed does not require them to approve it.
So they're allowed to say no if they decide that's the right decision.
Of course they're allowed to say no.
That was all my question. So as far as the planning board, I appreciate the current chairman explaining the process. So this is sort of why I wanted to clarify it, because this particular thing is discretionary. Maybe to answer previous residents' question about the process, current chairman can't answer. Is there anyone who was on the planning board who could perhaps explain the rationale for this project? Thank you.
My name is Ann Sermos, and I live at 6 Carriage Hill Road in Andover.
Welcome.
And there is also another project coming up very soon called the Dascom Road Project, and I hope that...
We're here to talk about this one, though.
Well,
This is what's
I
on
just
the,
hope that
This is what's on the
people
agenda, though. This is
in
what's-
this room take care as to what is going to happen in this project
It
for the
is-
neighbors and the whole town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Jessica Anners. I'm from 6 Cheever Circle. I wanted to note that even at 6 Cheever Circle, we feel the effects. And everyone's talking about their homes, but you're also not talking about the effects on your residents. I'm home often with a 4-year-old child who feels it and who gets scared. There's been no communication for me to even prepare him. Oh, that this could happen at this time. Or, honey, this is only one today. There's not going to be another one. I have nothing to say to him. Nothing has been given to me from the town. The planning board failed us already, and now the town hasn't even been there to help us protect. There's nothing I can say to him. There's no code red. There's no communication. There's no nothing. Not even a letter that I could go and look at or a reference on the town of what was going to be going on. At 2:20 today, it shook. It shook our house. He was scared, even on Cheever Circle. I can't imagine living any closer to the project and feeling that on a daily basis. What it has to do for a child and anybody living through that daily, it's awful. And the town of Andover has done nothing to stop it or to think about your residents. I can't even really give my child a date that when it's going to stop. Friday, you're not even giving us any information of when it happens. The rock crushing, I have nothing to prepare my family as a mother to be able to help your child when they're wondering, is it going to happen again? I can't say anything, and you're not giving us any information to go forward. And it's an awful feeling to be sitting in a town where I moved to a few years ago, to be dismissed by the planning board, and to be sitting here today and leaving with no information again. I'm hoping that as we go forward, that you'll stop and you really will do something to protect us as residents, to go over what the planning board allowed and to look at all of the regulations and make sure that we are aware and that this really is up to code and that this is safe for the residents. Thank you.
My name is Mark DeCourcy. I live at 40 Pine Street.
Welcome.
The property, our property directly abuts this project. I'm looking at the blasting regulatory review form, which I plan on filling out and following the procedure. I don't see anything about a certificate of insurance for either the general liability contractor, the blasting company. I don't see anything about the environmental policy that they would have had, because there's a pond in the backyard. And the water has changed color that we noticed last week or the week before when we had that unseasonably warm weather. The color of the water changed. So now there's an environmental issue at hand. But the 30 days here, I'm not an attorney, but I am a commercial insurance underwriter. And I've worked for more than a decade for Liberty Mutual and AIG, doing insurance for contractors. Massachusetts statute of repose is 6 years, so I don't know what the 30 days is about, but I'll be digging into that issue shortly after this meeting. But as far as the planning board is concerned, when you granted the building permits, do you have the certificates of insurance for for the contractor's liability policy, the general liability policy? Because that information will be, nobody needs to hire attorneys and whatnot, because the homeowner's insurance policies are going to subrogate against this contractor. So that information needs to be front and center. Do you have it right now? That would be great, because I don't have a lot of time for all this stuff. So, is that?
I don't have it right now. Okay. Part of the permit process, they had to submit their general liability and their workers' compensation insurance.
Yep,
the general
liability is what we're concerned about, because that policy provides coverage for bodily injury and property damage that arises from their operations. And I think you've heard plenty of occurrences here this evening about damage and so forth, including the 15-foot long crack in my foundation.
Chief Mansfield, doesn't the blasting company also, isn't that required to have insurance as
They'll
well?
have to have a separate policy as well.
Yeah,
Most liability policies excluded. But
Right.
They do have a separate policy for that.
Okay, thank you.
So how will this form, Chief, interact with those policies and whatnot? This is just an investigation, if I understand?
Yeah, it's an investigation. What I do is once the form is filled out, I look at the date that the individual filled that form out stating that the damage occurred. I look at the blast data for that particular day to see if there were any violations. We know before any paperwork is filed whether or not there were any violations, and to date, there have not been any blasting violations on that site. Unfortunately, that's what I have to report.
Understood. But this is simply supplemental information that goes hand in hand with the claim information that is regarding the damage to the property, correct?
It gets filed with the state, and the state Department of Fire Services and their safety division takes it from there, and what they do with that information, I'm really not sure. But that is the process that we have to follow at the local level, and we're following it to a T.
Absolutely, Chief. Please don't think that I was suggesting otherwise. I'm just saying that there are two parallel issues. The insurance damage for the property damage that a lot of people have talked about here today is completely separate from the violation issues.
Understood.
Okay, yep, so we agree on
Understood,
that.
absolutely.
Beautiful. Okay, great. So people should, if you have damage, you should report it to your homeowner's insurance policy, and they will subrogate against the liability policies for the blasting company, the general contractor, and the planning board is saying that you have all of those certificates of insurance, the contact information for their claims organizations, and we'll be able to get that quick, fast, and in a hurry, right?
Not a problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir?
Hi, Mike Harvey, 7 Twin Brook Circle. I had a question for Chairman Simcoe that stemmed from a prior gentleman's questions, and that is, on the town website, in the planning board section, there's about 8 years of history of special permit requests. My question is, does that reflect all requests that have come forward, to the board, or is that just a subset? The reason being is, in 8 years, I didn't see a single denial of any special permit request.
I'm going to defer to Paul Matarazzo on that because it predates my time on the board and living in town.
Paul Matarazzo, Director of Planning. I'd have to revisit the website to confirm whether that's the entire list, but I believe there may be other applications that have been withdrawn and a decision before the board had not been made.
So there were some that were withdrawn, but I'm assuming that's been on the request of the applicant. Correct. I mean, the board wouldn't withdraw.
Correct. I can't make assumptions for petitioners. They may have realized that they may not have been getting anywhere with their application before it at that time.
So I'm wondering, if, for future reference, if one of the issues, because there seemed to be some debate around whether special permits are discretionary. I asked that exact question of Zach Bergeron years ago when this first came up, and the clear answer I got was, yes, they are discretionary. But I keep hearing reference to litigation. Should what we be doing is looking at the zoning bylaws and what is the board empowered to do and take away that concern? It seems like they're saying yes to everything for fear of litigation. That's the wrong thing to do.
So I'll just say this. So it is not by right. It's special permit, which means it's discretionary. But the best way to think about that is we have the discretion to disapprove a special permit if an applicant hasn't satisfied our criteria, but we do not have the discretion to arbitrarily deny a special permit if the applicant has met the criteria that are laid out in the zoning.
That's exactly.
That wasn't my understanding, but I'm not a lawyer, so
Well, you asked the question, I'm giving you my best answer.
Maybe we need to remove special permits as, it seems like we have enough zoning guidance. I'm not sure why that's even necessary, particularly if all we do is say yes. Thank you.
Me again. In 2015, that came up. The bylaws did talk about the effect to the neighborhood. And so from that aspect of discretion, okay, I'm not interested in hearing whether they will meet fire code, building code, whether Bob is satisfied as far as the Conservation Commission. I don't care about all that. They did that. They met height requirements, they met setbacks, they did all of that. That's great. There is specific language in the bylaws before you allow for the special permit to change what was supposed to be single-family housing, to change that zoning, to allow something else, is the effect in the neighborhood. That very much is in discretion of the planning board. The same planning board that was too weak to say no. Why? Because they were afraid of getting sued. Same thing happened on Lowell Street, okay? I'm tired of it, all right? Just because they said, oh, it can't be that high, fine, we'll go a little bit lower. Oh, is 100,000 square feet too big? How about 80? Is 80 okay? 80 is great. Oh, is the setback? Oh, you want a little bit further back? Not a problem. We'll do all of that. What other hoops do you want us to go through? I get it. I've built homes, okay? For me, I've built homes. I've gone through the hoops. I've gone through Bob's hoops. I've gone through the hoops. That's not the problem. Here, it required a special permit, and the bylaws talk about that. So you did have the discretion. Not you personally, I'm saying the planning board. They had the discretion. They were afraid of getting sued, they were afraid of saying no, and they said yes. And we need to get them to be more honest about what the bylaws are. I'm not interested in hearing that, yes, they met every hoop that we gave them, they went through, with no consideration of the people in this room, okay? If that's going to happen, then fine. I don't want to go to any special permits about other projects we're not supposed to talk about tonight. I don't want to hear about it. Just do it. Allow all of it. As long as they're willing to meet the setback, meet the height, keep Conservation Commission happy, as I had to do. If they want to do all that, and it doesn't matter what the abutters think, it doesn't matter about the neighborhood, it doesn't matter about the historic home right across. If none of that matters, great, please, I don't want to be here. I won't come back. That's fine. Just let it go through. All of them. Let every goddamn one go through. Great. Thank you.
Okay, we're well beyond the 45 minutes, so please, if we could.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Greg Luckman, 13 Florence Street.
Welcome,
I
Greg.
live just a little too far away to be impacted myself. As I've observed this whole thing, I think there was what some people would call a dirty trick, and that was piggybacking one section of the bylaw on top of another. If it hadn't been for that, I'm inclined to say bogus subdivision, then it's my understanding that the earth removal would have been a lot smaller. That's really got to be looked at in the zoning bylaws, because if the assisted care living section of the bylaw says one thing, but then a developer can get around that by combining two parts of the bylaw together, then that assisted care living bylaw section is meaningless. Because every developer is going to piggyback two things together to allow something greater. So that's really got to be looked at in the bylaws. Okay.
Thank you. Sheila Doherty on Juniper Road. I just want, I don't have a standing other than a terrible interest in this, but I do want to make some free insurance advice to all of you who have damage or who may have damage going forward. First of all, take pictures of your foundation, your four walls that are date stamped. Take pictures of it, because then a week from now, if you have damage, you've got evidence that it wasn't there prior, and now you have it. Get the certificate of insurance from the building inspector's office, and those of you who have damage already, make a direct claim to the insurance carrier with that policy number on it. Take that policy number, get in touch with the insurance company and or the developer's, the contractor's agent. The contractor's agent's going to be reluctant to put a claim in, but the insurance company must respond to your claim. If you have an estimate from somebody that is going to repair that damage, send that with it. Many of your homeowners won't cover damage to the basements. They will cover damage above ground. So something that you can very positively do to check for yourselves, if you're going to have, if damage happens in the future, it's going to make it so much easier for you to get paid if you can show evidence that you didn't have damage prior. I am truly amazed that the blasting company didn't send a 1/4 mile radius at all the homes to check the foundations. That is truly amazing to me from the standpoint of the insurance companies. I'm sorry? Who's going to be paying the check? I don't know, but that's something all I'm saying is, if you want to be successful in your claim, you need to evidence that you didn't have coverage before, you have it now, this is what it's going to cost to repair it, and yes, you need to go through the State Department process, but definitely go directly to the insurance company, because that's going to get you the best and quickest response. If anyone needs any help, I'm happy to help you with that, so just call my office.
Excuse me, that's really inappropriate for the moderator, an insurance agent in town, to be doing a commercial at this time during this type of conversation. That was really inappropriate to offer your services to this crowd. And please identify yourself, Mrs. Salafia. Yes, thank you.
All right. I didn't picture that as a commercial. I thought it was much more of a helpful advice. And she didn't want to sell. I didn't think she was trying to sell you insurance. I thought she was trying to help you.
It was advice until she offered help.
What's wrong with offering help, Bob?
As an insurance
You're gonna
agent
take another
in town,
cheap shot?
that's a commercial.
Okay.
Closing question, unless there's no more?
Yeah, very quickly, please.
Very quickly. The new chairman of the planning board. So, when everything was approved, it was little or no blasting. Did something happen this past October where blasting was approved by the planning department or board? What happened in October? Because I think it's material to all the problems that are here. Was there a decision made this past October to approve blasting?
Paul Matarazza, Director of Planning. I believe what you're referencing is a pre-construction meeting, and there may have been some additional investigation that had been done by the proponent, and at that time they then facilitated conversations with the appropriate parties to pull appropriate permits for the limited blasting which they're undertaking right now.
So why was,
let's not.
So I ask this, given the controversy around the project, a decision was made without community involvement. We talked about cell phone towers and community involvement and how important that is. Why on earth was a blasting decision made and the people in this room were not informed? Because the rules said you didn't have to?
Absolutely not. The question you're asking was specifically talked about with the planning board, and in the planning board's condition, specifically, I believe condition 9 talks about that if blasting is required, that the proponent would have to get the appropriate permits, and I believe that's what they are doing at the moment.
And there was no need to inform the community.
All right, please, let's not just holler out, please, okay?
The fire department.
No, they've had permits since way before the first blast. They have to file blast analysis, a pre-blast survey. That gets submitted to the state, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Fire Services, prior to anything occurring on site. They do an on-site survey. They have representatives on site going through all these plans with main drilling and blasting prior to the first blast occurring. The pre-blast surveys that are required by law were performed by a third-party company for any resident abutter that was within 300 feet of the blast zone. That was all done.
Okay, and you guys, by the way, the fire department's been fabulous. But my question's different. When was the decision to allow blasting, and who made it?
I think I heard he said the planning board, it was in their original decision, correct?
No, it wasn't.
Yeah. Right, but Tom, in the special permit, what does it actually say about blasting? Do you know?
It says there will be blasting, but there's the pre-blasting survey was done, and Chris has the answer.
Condition number 9 of the special permit. Any blasting operations shall require proper permits and may not be undertaken on any weekend or holiday.
In McElwee's note to me, they said a mistake was made and a decision had to be made on blasting. Who approved the blasting? And when was it approved? We were told that the approval was done in October. Why can I not get a straight answer? Who approved the blasting? Did the planning board approve the blasting?
It's in the decision, is it not? I think he just read it to you.
Right. The planning board approved the order of conditions, which includes number 9, as Inspector Clementi just explained. So to answer you, sir, the answer is the planning board. Planning board. I went out.
Say it again. I can hear
Planning board.
Planning board.
Planning board.
The planning board.
The planning board decision is dated July 21st, 2015.
So what happened? All these mics are off. Trying to tell us something? So I'm not buying this. I'm sorry. I don't think a lot of people in the audience are buying it. Somebody approved this. We want to know who and when. What you're citing is something that there could be. The decision afterward, somebody made it that there must be, and we're trying to find out who made the decision and when it was made, and if that decision was made, why wasn't the community informed?
I'm not sure who made that decision, but once the decision was made, the fire department issued the permit.
Okay, the fire department, that's great, that's good. You guys have been wonderful. We want to know who issued it, and you guys can't tell us.
The fire department issued the permit.
Oh, now we're getting technical. Who approved it?
I think that's been answered a bunch of times. It was the planning.
Fire
board.
department. Oh, hey!
It was the planning
Does everybody
board's
understand this?
original
'Cause I
decision.
don't.
In the order of conditions approved by the planning board, number 9, condition number 9, which said if blasting was required, it would be monitored by the fire department. So it was approved, again, by the planning board and has since been monitored by Andover Fire Rescue. Planning board.
I'm going to step down because I feel I'm not getting an appropriate answer. I feel there's a subsequent decision that had to be made on blasting. A mistake was made. You guys had to meet to say, you know what? And this came from McElwee that, oh, the things were wrong. I come from a construction family, and my family said you don't make mistakes of this magnitude. Just to share that data point. But somebody then had to make a decision to say this blasting, has to happen, and there had to be community involvement because the level of blasting, 3 calendar months of blasting, isn't minor. Somebody had to greenlight this. Okay, I guess that answers it.
Thank you. Okay, last speaker, if we could, because we were well beyond the 45 minutes we allowed. So.
Keith Saxon, 15 Weathersfield Drive. I do not live in the neighborhood, but several of the residents have reached out to me as my background is compliance, regulatory compliance, and I'm familiar with pulling information. I think we've heard the failure of the planning process. I've had a lot of disappointed meetings for other sites, but that's not what I'm here. What I'm here to talk about is what other towns do and other cities do, and what we need to do in this town is that is have rules and regulations for our residents. So instead of having I don't want to call it a bitch session, but you hear unhappy residents, what other cities do in Massachusetts, Malden is an example I'll give, is they have a public information session as part of their own blasting regulations. So if there's going to be blasting, they call a very specific public information session, and that for residents can come and get information. Decisions that are posted on the board we talk about, many other towns, they have this flyer, which is the facts about blasting. It's the Department of Fire Services. I think it would have been very helpful for a lot of the residents here. I have given many residents as well the FP 296 form so they know what to do. Information on how to file insurance or how to take pictures beforehand so they could file. That's all very helpful information. So I think that's the kind of things that we need to see here. And I would say I have actually put together a draft bylaw to have a public information session. So if anyone wants to see me and add their name to it for our Springtown meeting, I would appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, sure.
Chief Mansfield, are there the pre-blasting plans each day that you review? I believe the code requires those.
There's a review of the blasting plan before any of the blasting occurs.
Okay, can we get copies of those plans?
No,
Why is that?
because it's protected information under the Homeland Security Act. And I've got, I've received...
Well, he doesn't make it up, it's his,
No.
I get it. He doesn't make it up.
I've received that opinion from the attorney that represents the fire services for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and our own counsel here, Tom Herbalis.
Okay, and the other thing, listening here, was that parents were concerned about buses. And during those hours, it says in some agreement that the people made here, that there was to be no construction vehicles operating during the hours that the school buses were running the roads. Why not call off National Grid until the buses are finished, bringing forth children throughout the day, Monday and the
As
evening?
far as the buses are concerned, I made one phone call and they have not been running the same time as the construction equipment.
National Grid is on the streets all day long.
National Grid is a separate entity.
But they're part of the construction, they're upping the...
I'm not sure if they're part of that project, ma'am.
You're not sure? Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We had a lot of information, obviously. I think the town will continue to take in information. Mr. Mangiarati offered to be the kind of the clearinghouse for that. So please continue to stay involved. We heard your issues, and hopefully we'll be able to do chip away at some of the things that you're experiencing. So thank you very much for coming this evening. Okay.